Hi everyone, welcome to Megan's Mystical Mashup. So today's guest is the fabulous Stephanie Weinman, who many of us know and love as Stephanie Kathleen-Carpenter. Stephanie has been a member of the Lightworkers Lab since its inception over 2 years ago. She is a moderator and primarily hangs out in the main lab. Her main modalities are intuitive empath, like me, and claircognizance. She owns a spiritual wellness business called Spirit and Sage Healing, or SASH for short. Stephanie lives in Rochester, New York with husband Malcolm and Kitty Pants, their 30-pound cat. Malcolm and Stephanie have 2 incredible boys. They're pretty amazing if you've heard anything about them. 21-year-old Dakota and 19-year-old Casey. Interesting fact about Stephanie, back in the day, she was a professional ballet dancer, which I fully expect to see signs of when we have a group dance party at the Bliss Retreat. Although that hasn't been planned, it's been suggested, and I think it's an awesome idea, and I hope to be there to enjoy it. But even if not, I hope it's, shown live. Please give a warm welcome to Stephanie Weinman.
Hey guys, how are you? Hey Megan.
Hi.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming back on.
Of course, absolutely. It's lovely.
Yeah. Well, so one of the first questions I like to ask guests is, I've asked you this in the past, but I'm going to ask you again, is just tell us a bit about your path to the Lightworkers Lab. How did you find the group, Crystal, etc.?
Oh my goodness. Well, that's a loaded question.
Those are my favorites.
I know, right? Well, okay, so I found Crystal Ann Compton, our fearless leader, of course. I found her randomly on Facebook about probably almost 4 years ago. I had really kind of come into my own, into that I was an intuitive, and this was something that I needed to kind of dive into and explore a little bit more. So I was just on Facebook. This is before she had any of her like real pages or her, or anything like that. And I was just looking up intuitives, and she had popped up on Facebook. I started kind of listening to her and just following her, and I was sucked in immediately.
As many of us are.
Yes, I completely sucked in. And then probably a few months after that, I signed up for my first Crystal Ann Compton class, which was the 10-day high vibration detox. It really intrigued me how you could, because I didn't even know about having a high vibration or low vibration or how that affects us when connecting to spirit or anything like that at that point. It was all brand new to me, and I was totally drawn to that. So I signed up for that class for the detox, and I'll never forget, after the 10 days, for when Crystal was facilitating the detox, she would give all of the members of the class a 20-minute phone reading, essentially, to kind of end off it was amazing. So it was my first experience actually communicating with her on the phone. And in my reading, she was like, "So, Steph," she's like, "I don't know if this would interest you or not." She goes, "But your whole spirit team wants you to stop what you're doing with your job now, and they want you to go into business for spiritual wellness and to be an intuitive." And I was like, "What?
Wow.
What do you mean?" She's like, "Is that something you'd even be interested in?" I was like, "Oh, hell yeah." And that was the catalyst for me really diving in, for starting my spiritual business. And then I just obviously kept following her, taking more classes, and then through her obviously grew into the Lightworkers Lab, which is where we are now.
Wow. What were you doing before?
I was, oh goodness, well, I feel like I've had so many different lives in just this lifetime. Like, this is honestly like my 3rd lifetime in this incarnation. So like you had mentioned before, I was a professional ballet dancer up until my early 20s. And once I had my kids, then I was in the restaurant business for 17 years. bartending, serving, managing, banquet managing, all that kind of stuff. Then from there, I transitioned into healthcare, and I was a pharmacy technician and an anesthesia tech,
Wow.
working in the OR with anesthesiologists during surgeries, working with the nurses and the doctors and the surgeons and things like that. And once I really started diving into my intuitive path, my spiritual path, my awakening, I started to realize that at that point I was an anesthesia tech, really. And it was really hard working in that environment. Just a lot of sick people, which was great. You know, it was great to be able to be there for the sick people during these times, but it was really difficult for me to be able to, it taught me how to protect myself and my energy for sure. But I manifested getting out of that work. I kept meditating on it and visualizing, seeing myself doing something else. And lo and behold, I fell, hurt my knee, couldn't go back to that job, and was able to really put all of my time into what I'm doing now.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope this isn't in bad taste, but what occurred to me when you said the anesthesia tech is that it's interesting that your job is to oversee people's, kind of going to sleep while you're awakening. You know?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it really is, it's crazy when I think back on it now to see the progression, like hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
And it was all happening how it was supposed to be, But it really, how it all unfolded, it's just like, well, duh, that's how it was supposed to be. So yeah, it's still kind of wild to me when I think back on it all, to be honest with you.
Well, and I think that that whole hindsight 2020 part is such an interesting piece. I work with people in change and transition, and am really aware of uncertainty and how hard that can be when it's like, okay, so you get the catalyst of it's time to stop and do this other thing, but there's a whole gap in between there of like, and what happens in that time, and how do I do
Right.
it, and how did
Right.
you work through that? Was it challenging for you, or was it, because you had your knee injury, do you feel like that happened because you were
Yep.
resisting the change or not ready for the change, and it was really like, no, you really need to do this now? Or, I'm just curious about those things.
I think that it happened to propel me forward because I wasn't going to leave my job. Honestly, obviously I couldn't financially just quit and pursue this, hoping that something might come of it. So what I know from deep down and from my intuitiveness is that I literally, for about, before I fell and hurt my knee, which was on my front step,
Oh no.
I literally was like running out of the house to go buy wine, of course. I hadn't even had a drink yet.
Oh my God.
And I stepped out on my front step on ice, and down I went.
Oh.
And it wasn't a terrible injury, but that's how it happened. And for about probably 3 or 4 months before that is when, before I would go to work every day, I would have to sit and meditate and protect myself with the energy, energy from my coworkers, just from the energy being in a basement of a hospital and a trauma OR. And during those meditations, I would also visualize and manifest what I wanted to see myself doing. And lo and behold, I fell and hurt my knee, which, it wasn't a great thing, but at the same point, I did receive disability, so the money part wasn't an issue at that point for me to be able to stay home and really continue and really work on building this business and building who I am and building my spirituality and build on my awakening. So I don't think it was because it was like that I was, rejecting it. I think it's because I was trying to lean into it, and spirit assisted that way. Is how I've always thought about it.
Yeah, it strikes me it's a good example of the universe always provides. It's not always in the way we ask, but it definitely is helpful. How's your knee now? I know that was a while ago, but has your knee?
It's it's funny because it's actually it's much better. It's not 100%. It never will be. Like, I can't run, I can't go on vigorous hikes, things like that. But I mean, I can do, basic everyday stuff. I just found out, actually, that my disability is stopping July 31st. It's over.
Wow.
And they do agree that I can't go back to my job that I did have. Like physically, I just can't do that. So my husband and I have made the decision that I am leaving, leaving that it was a wonderful place. I worked at the hospital, University of Rochester, really an amazing facility, but I am quitting. I've still been an employee this whole time. I've been on disability there, but we made that decision. We're ready. We have full faith in myself and in what I do and what he does too. So we're both kind of building our careers right now around what we love. And we decided, you know what? We're going to be done with it. We're going to focus on us and our passion and who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. And we're just going to go from there. So, I was lucky enough to have that financial kind of security to kind of carry me through, because it's been 2.5 years. So I've been extremely blessed and extremely lucky that spirit and all the energy around me has been helping me to pursue this and to help me create all of this. And I just feel incredibly lucky. I really do.
What an amazing and inspiring story. And I love that you and your husband are both really gravitating towards work that you love. I feel like I'm in a similar spot where, I always was just going through, even work that was mine in my own business wasn't work that I particularly loved. It was more that I felt I should do it because I had competence in that area or expertise. It's like, but my heart is just not in it. And now I'm at the point where I just can't do anything but, I have to do what I love now. I don't have a tolerance for anything else anymore.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
A big theme through what your story was, especially, about this transition part, is trust and just faith that the universe, has our backs. I've heard a lot, like leap of faith, all of you didn't say that this time, but I've heard that. For me, it's it's like everywhere. It's like, take the leap of faith, trust, faith, believe.
Yes. Exactly. And leaning into it.
Yes.
And it's that trust, and because we all know that, that self-doubt, from our ego minds, our monkey minds, is kind of the killer of all of our hopes and dreams. And I've learned over the years to just stop that and to lean into it. Because I feel like I've really learned that the more I lean into everything that I love, into what I feel that I am supposed to be doing, is the more support I get from not only spirit, but from my family and my friends. My parents are behind me 100%. My kids are behind me 100%. My husband is. And how lucky am I? I know so many people who don't have that support, being all woo-woo and stuff,
I think, I do think there's a point by which it's, if you're happy, they're happy. Because if you're, I know in my family, if I'm unhappy, everybody knows it, even though I don't try to spread that discontent with others. It's just, they pick up on it. Oh, if you hear that there's this really loud sound in my parents' home when their garage door goes up and down, it sounds like there's an earthquake. The first time it happened, I jumped about a foot. I'm like, what the hell is that? I should interject that we have some kind of significant weather event moving in 15 minutes or so. So, fireworks could happen. It should be fun. Hopefully everything stays as it should, but just
how we like
heads
it.
up.
See what's coming up. Who knows?
I'm a big fan of the storms. I just would prefer if they'd wait until my show's done.
Right. So plus then you could enjoy them too.
Yeah.
Being in Tennessee in the mountains, like a good rainstorm, thunderstorm is quite a show.
Definitely. And then there's fog. It's really very, it's like an all-day event here. And I'm kind of glad it's here and not where I live normally, because it would be very fun to drive and stuff.
Yes.
Well, so what's been on the top of mind recently for you?
The top of my mind?
Yeah, just what's been,
Oh my goodness. Honestly, like I've had a lot, I feel like, going on and building up in all areas of my life right now, whether it be between my kids, actually, who my son is just texting me now,
Oh.
my kids, my parents, my work. And what I've really been thinking about and focusing on right now is not letting myself get overwhelmed
Mm.
and really kind of taking a step back and realizing that, listen, first of all, I don't have to do all of this all on my own. I'd love to
Mm.
say I'm super or Wonder Woman, because in my mind I am, but
Hello.
but I cannot do it all on my own. And I
Mm.
take a step back, and I've learned to ask for help when I need it. I've learned to really try to not stress myself. I've always had an issue ever since I was a kid with stress and like taking on more,
Mm.
which I think has a lot to do with being an empath. I never knew as a kid that I was an empath, and that was kind of what was, I don't want to say afflicting me, because that's not a good word, but that I was picking up that energy and carrying it and always been so stressed out. So that's always been kind of an issue with me, is being a worry wart and
Mm.
stressing.
Yeah.
And I've been learning over the past few months that, there's been great things and not so great things going on, but I'm trying not to get overwhelmed and just being grateful for everything that
Mm.
is positive going on right now and that is moving forward. And I think that rubs off too on some people around me in my life. Like with even my dad, he's been going through some health issues and things, and he's staying so positive now, to the point where his wife, my stepmom, is like, he's just always so positive now. He just thinks he's always just positive about everything, and I'm like, yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
That's
definitely.
great.
So, so that's really something that that I've been really working on, and it's been on the top of my head right now. And the more positive I stay, and the more I try not to really worry, I'll take that step back when I start to feel a bit overwhelmed, and I'll ask myself these questions. Uh, First of all, is what I'm feeling right now even mine to feel? Do I need to check myself? Um, is it somebody else's stuff, or is it my stuff? Then I'll go through my list. If I feel like it is my stuff, are my bills paid? Are my kids okay? Is
Mm.
Malcolm okay? And if all that's good, then I'll be like, well, then what you're worried about, is it going to affect you tomorrow or the next week or next month? No? Okay, well, then let it go
Oh.
and just continue on. So that's really a lot of kind of things I've been working on, I have to say, personally over the past few months, because there's lots of good stuff going on right now, and lots of growth and building of things. So it's
Well,
been a little crazy.
so a couple of questions, and thank you for sharing that, especially your flow chart list of questions. I love that, and it's good to have a process around that. I tend to wait. I will adopt that because for me it's like
Yes, please do.
eventually it's like, why am I so upset? And then it's like, is this mine? And it's almost a reactionary thing. And I don't want it to be. I want to be proactive about recognizing whether or not it's my stuff or somebody else's. And,
Yep.
and like you, I grew up never knowing that I was picking up all of this stuff around me.
Right.
And I'm the
Right.
oldest. And there was a time there when my sisters were around that my parents were super stressed. And I never recognized that it was their stress. And
Exactly.
now I understand, and I'm glad. I'm glad that eventually, I was able to get it because
Right.
learning that is such a profound and life-changing experience, the empath way, really. And but I'm curious about a couple of different things. One is, okay, and this is a big question. How do you let it
Okay.
go? If it's not yours, how do you let it go? Do you have a
That's a good
process?
question. Um, Honestly, so when I get to that point where I'm like, none of this stuff, none of this anxiety I'm holding is either, if it's not mine, or if it's not going to be affecting me, what really it's easier for me to let it go. The big question that I ask myself that really seems to help is this something that's going to even affect you tomorrow or next week or
Mm.
next month? That really helps me in the process of letting go, to be honest with you. And then when I get to that, it kind of calms my nerves, to be honest with you. It just calms me down, and then I can really then focus on kind of becoming more organized on what it is I need to be focused on. I kind of distract myself into
Mm.
things that I need to be working on rather than the worry. And that's a way that I feel like it helps
Mm.
me to release that energy. If I have something else that I focus on that I know is going to benefit me or that is going to propel me forward, that it kind of just dissipates that worry and that anxiety for me. So
That's
I know it's
excellent.
kind of an old personal thing. I think it's kind of a very personal way. We kind of all have to develop our own way to release it, but that's how it works for me, if
It,
that makes sense.
it totally makes sense. Okay, I have flickering lights here, but so far
Yes, you
still a
do.
feed. So we're keeping the, if it goes dark, I'll still talk until I can't see myself working on the laptop. But um, so what that focusing on stuff that's going to propel you forward reminds me of a circle of control, which is it David Coveney or somebody? I think it's David Coveney, who's a business dude who he wouldn't describe himself as a business dude. Probably most people describe him as a business guru, but I don't really like to use guru. So he's a business dude who talks about just what is within our control and what is outside of our control. And worry
Yes,
oftentimes is stuff that we have no control over, and we worry about it, but we can't do anything about it. So why not focus on the things we can control? And there's all kinds of philosophical things around the word control in general that we're not going to go into, but I think that what you do is an example of that. And not just what you can control, but what you can control in a positive way to propel your life and to make it even more positive is just a really brilliant way to move past that uncertainty and that grip of worry that can take us over when we just don't know what's going to happen. And we've all been trained to think about the worst case scenario as well. So it's like, this is a
yeah,
great way to get out of that. I'm of the belief
exactly.
you focus on the best case scenario now. I know there was a reason for worst case scenario thinking, and it's helpful to understand all outcomes. But now it's like, if we have all of these different options available to us, why are we focusing on the worst one and attracting that into our lives? Let's focus on the good ones and attract those into our lives instead. I like the way that.
100%. Yes. And that's really, that's funny that you brought that up, like the positivity and the optimism, because that is something else that really changed my life too. And I know I've talked about this in the past, but there was a time, probably I think it was probably about 7, 8 years ago, where I wasn't my best self. I wasn't doing what I needed to be happy and to take care of myself, or the people around me, and things kind of came to a head, and I finally just kind of lost it to an extent, and was like, listen, I'm not okay. I was always the one that was, everybody always thought, oh, Steph's okay, she'll be fine, she's fine, she's okay. And I finally realized, listen, I'm not okay. And from then on out, I really focused on taking care of myself. And to be honest with you, that started with changing my self-thought and really including positivity and optimism into my daily life. And I know for some people around me, it might get annoying. But at this point, a lot of those people are picking up on that and realizing that it really does help, that self-talk, that self-thought, and staying positive and seeing the positive side of things, even when you get handed some shit basically. There's always something that you're going to be learning from that, and you have to always kind of try to see that, the positivity in everything. Otherwise you are just going to be attracting all that crap back to you all the time. And that's really helped me propel myself also in who I've become and what I've done over the past 8, 10 years.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a couple of questions from that. Well, one's a comment. I grew up in the era of Monty Python. My dad's a big Monty Python fan. I'm also married to a British guy. So I'm like surrounded by Monty Python. And in life,
I love the Brits. Yes.
Yeah, in Life of Brian, they have a song called Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. Now, there's some satire involved in it, but I grew up with that song. It's like,
Yes.
I think it did frame the way I look at things. And there was a gap in my life where I definitely went to the dark side as well, in terms of not remembering that song and looking at the bright side and being kind of a grouch a lot of the time. I love that this part about you're not being okay sounded like a defining moment. And
it was. It was.
And the fact that you moved into positive and optimistic thinking, do you have specific things that you did? Were there books you read or movies you watched, or what helped you in making that shift?
Honestly, it was combining like physically taking care of myself better, making the mental choice to not be stuck where I was and how I felt, because at that point I felt like I knew there was something more for me, and what I was doing was, I was not okay with just being stuck and stagnant. And like you said, that moment where I was raw and vulnerable, and I said, I'm not okay. I feel like that released so much energy, and so a lot of that stagnant energy that it had built up in me for years and years. And me saying that and accepting that I wasn't okay opened me up to be able to bring in all the positivity and the optimism and all the opportunity that there was for me. And I just kind of leaned into that. I just started making changes that I felt would benefit me. And a lot of that was leaning into my spirituality more. That really, I can almost pinpoint that moment of me saying I'm not okay to the beginning of my awakening. And it just kind of snowballed from there, and I know that, a lot of people, when they do have their awakenings, it's not always so easy, and it's, it can be really difficult. I know quite a few people who've had some really hard times going through their awakening. I can't say that it was hard for me, to be honest with you. It just kind of, once I opened myself up to it, it just kind of naturally kind of snowballed in a really positive way. So I just kept focusing on the future and bettering myself and my family from there on out. And it just kind of felt natural. So, there wasn't anything specific, that I would watch or listen to encourage me. It just was me keeping like my eye on the prize,
sure.
kind of, and having that vision to see that there was something different and better for me in the future and ahead of me. So that really helped to propel me and help me to feel comfortable and kind of just following, not following, but I don't know how to explain it.
Well,
just kind of let the flow kind of take me.
Sure. Which again goes back to trust and believing that this is the right move for, the right change for you, the right thing to do. And I love that. Thank you for telling us about it. I'm curious, how did you just suddenly have a new vision, or did you go through a process by which you clarified, maybe an inkling of what you wanted your life to be? Or, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying.
Thank you.
I mean, I had an inkling, and it probably, honestly, like when I started to realize that there was a bigger picture in general than what I was just living on my day-to-day life. That was probably it was probably like 2005, maybe 2006. And I know this is going to sound really cheesy, and you can all laugh at me for this, but I was watching this really cheesy TV show called Charmed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that show made me realize, I was like, wait, what? There's real witches and Wicca, and what is all of this? So that show got me interested in learning about
Oh.
Wicca. And I'm not Wiccan, I'm not a witch. I don't proclaim to be that, but I've learned a lot about it over the years. And that kind of sparked my interest in learning about, connecting with Mother Nature and with Gaia and just with everything otherworldly and metaphysical. And then things started to kind of progress from there. So, I did have an inkling when I actually did awaken as to what it was that I felt drawn to, but I
Mm.
just didn't obviously know the gravity of what that was and how it would affect me completely in the future.
I've got like six questions all jumbled around in my head now because this is so cool. Thank you.
Of
Uh,
course.
a part of it, I have noticed for me, I'm drawn to certain things and then they start showing up in my life. And so I love these paranormal romance. Well, I don't even know if they were romance novels. What was it? Deborah Harkness, I think, is the person I'm thinking of.
Yes. All Souls trilogy.
Yeah, yeah. Love that. Well,
Those
there's,
are my favorite books.
yeah, love those.
Yeah. A Discovery of Witches.
Yep, yep.
Yep.
Um, I
Yes.
I seem to read those annually without really meaning to. I just do.
Me
You
too.
know?
I love, 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 love those books.
Yep. And Deborah Geary as well, who is less known. She's written just, I mean, they were things that were free on Amazon, uh, whatever it is, the reading, Kindle Unlimited or whatever it is. And then she had some kind of life experience that changed her trajectory completely. And now she writes sci-fi and futuristic novels. But the ones that she wrote before then were all based on a witching community. She called them witches, but it's not the kind, I think those are just traditionally labels. And what
Right.
it was a community very similar in a lot of ways to the Lightworkers Lab. And so they have,
Really?
oh my gosh, I just love these books because they're very positive. These different witches have different powers. And so there's a fire witch and a water witches and mind
Yep.
witches. I mean, so they have different modalities basically. And they have
Right.
older, wiser people, and they have little kids with immense power, and they have adults trying to figure it out who would just learn that, oh my gosh, I have, intuitive abilities, or, it's like, it, and it's actually been a really helpful guide to me as I've learned more about my own gifts and what those gifts could be. And I think that that series, I'll put it in the show notes because I've got her name, but I can't remember the name of the books, which is kind of
I would
goofy
love
because
to know. Yeah,
there's a
for
lot
sure.
of them out there, and they may be harder to find now because it's such a bummer. She was modeling these novels after, I think, some of her own family, and then her family, would say it imploded, which is super
Yeah.
sad, because then when she went off and is now writing these other novels, which haven't really resonated with me in the same way, probably because I'm clinging so tightly to the other ones that I love so much, in this family and this huge community of very supportive, uplifting people. It may be harder to find those books, but at the same point, I personally am thinking of reaching out to her and just saying, I know you're not writing these anymore, but these are really good. And there's a whole community out there who would probably really love to read these, even if you're not writing them
Right.
anymore. Please
Could
make
be
them available.
inspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Absolutely.
I'll put them in show notes, but and I very well may reach out to her. I don't know her at all. I think she lives in Canada and somewhere on the West Coast. And she had this big letter because I signed up for her email list because I've read everything she's written until she went into the sci-fi route, which is like, I think maybe it's good now, but
You were like,
it's so
no.
different. Yeah, it's like otherworldly. So it may be very interesting to some people. But
Right.
I still go back and read these other novels, just because I always pick up another new thing. And so there was something about that, just these books that I've read that inspire, and they always seem to reach me when I'm at this certain point. And so I'm curious if there are books that have been, books or movies or things that have been integral, like Charmed, in almost like a signpost to your path, like go this way, or here, this will help you.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
for
okay.
sure. Yeah. Like, A Discovery of Witches,
Mm.
you know, those Deborah Harkness books for sure, like pulled me in, and it's very obviously like, you know, supernatural, and you know there's vampires and demons and all that, but I totally was drawn into that with the characters in that. And I'm trying to think. I know there were some other books. Oh, there's another series that Nora Roberts really
Mm.
actually writes some really cool witchy series of books too, and I can't think of the name of them now, but it's like brothers and sisters who are descendants of witches, and it takes place in Ireland, and those books, I can't remember the name. I'm sorry
I'll
right
find
now,
them.
but
I've seen them.
Nora Roberts really has some really great.
That you endorse them.
Yeah.
I read the write up for one of them, and it seemed dark, so I didn't go there. So if you like these, I will read them too, because I've
Yeah.
wondered about them, and I'll post them. I see a couple of questions about the book series we're talking right now about Deborah Harkness, and the Discovery of
Yes.
Witches. I will post these in show notes, and those show notes will be available on my website. Unfortunately, I cannot post all of the resources that we list in a regular show in the comments section, because I pick up pretty much anything we talk about and put links and things like that there. So the Nora Roberts series
Yes,
is another
that's
one.
the
Yeah.
All Souls trilogy.
Yes, thank you.
All Souls trilogy by Deborah Harkness.
Yep.
It's 3 books. They're amazing. I still read them, the trilogy, every year as well. I just can't get enough. I think I've read the trilogy probably at least 10 times. I just love them.
Well, and
so I always recommend her for that trilogy.
she is a time spinner, I think is how they call it. And I had a channeled writing a month ago maybe that had said I was a time weaver, and I'm like, I have to go back and read that because it's super. Maybe she's called a time. I think, yeah, it's like I don't really know what that is, but apparently I'm that. Just like, okay.
That's fascinating.
Well, yeah, I kind of think I've always been a very forward thinker. I can project myself into the future, and I've been able to project myself into the past. I just kind of thought that was something that most people could do. But I had an experience where I woke up a week before it was, and I swear it was a time traveling experience. I woke up thinking it was, I woke up and remembered, oh no, it's Father's Day, and I haven't done anything for my husband. I have an 11-year-old daughter who's not at this point of doing it all herself, and I haven't done anything for my father.
Right.
And so I remember thinking that and getting up and going into the bathroom to get ready, and then all of a sudden I'm in the present moment a week before. But it wasn't like a memory. It was like I was in next week. Now I'm in last,
That's crazy.
It was the way it felt was so different than like just a memory or just still sleeping or dreaming about it, that I was like, okay, well that's a first. It's kind of cool. At least I was aware of it, and it's like, I don't know. I guess that transition from waking and going into the bathroom was the I walked through a portal or something. I don't know, but it was pretty profound.
Fascinating.
Deborah Harkness, by the way, has another novel coming out. I don't believe it's a part of that. I don't know if it's a part of that series of the All Souls. Well, it was called the trilogy. I mean, I don't know if it's a part of that or if it's something new, but she has a new one coming out the end of this month or next month, I think.
Yes, and I think it's about one of the characters in the series. I feel like maybe it's kind of a spin-off, because I did read something about that and I can't remember. Oh, I think it's about Matthew Claremont's son, or one of his mentees or something like that. Or something like that.
Cool.
But I know what you're talking about, and I cannot wait. When I saw that, I was like, oh my God.
I know. I've put reminders. Yep. It's like, okay, I'm not pre-ordering it in May, but I am going to get it. So, it's like I have a little email pop-up thing to say, okay, buy that book. There's another, Mist of Avalon was just brought up by Reza, which is interesting because
Reza, I saw that. I'm not
Reza. I haven't either, and it's funny. I don't know if Lisa Robinette is watching, but she had done a reading for me and said that I should dig into Avalon more. I have no background or experience in those novels or anything having to do with Avalon, but apparently in my past I did.
Well, so maybe you should put that on your list.
I thought,
you should read those.
I'm adding it. Yep, right now. Very cool.
Thanks, Rosa.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, so there, I'm writing all of this stuff down. And so, going back to your story of taking a step back and really being intentional about um, stress relief. Do you have particular techniques or things that you do, or morning or evening practices that help you both alleviate stress but keep that stress at bay?
Um, that's a good question. I guess what I do, what I can say really is that, I try to, because I'm working from home now, so that actually is kind of a huge, a big relief for me personally to be able to really have control over my time and what it is I'm doing. And what I really do try to do is, by a certain time, usually if I can, by like 6 o'clock at night, between 6 and 7, make sure that I am kind of leaving everything behind that I need
Mm-hmm.
to, and then just spend time, at this point. I mean, it used to be with, my kids and Malcolm. Now it's just Malcolm, seeing as the boys are off doing their own gallivanting, doing their own thing. But just making sure I have that time to just kind of just put everything off to the side. I try not to carry it with me throughout the whole day if I can. It's really a self-care practice of
Mm-hmm.
being able to just let go and sit down and enjoy my dinner with my husband, and have my glass of wine, and maybe watch something funny on TV, or read a book, or just kind of to escape a little bit of reality. Not that
Mm-hmm.
I need escaping all the time, but it kind of gives me that relaxation and that stress relief. And I don't want to say like I depend on TV a lot, but laughing and watching comedies and things like that is really helpful to me. At
Definitely.
the end of my day, to be laughing for that last half hour before I go into bed, about something that's ridiculous and stupid and funny. It may sound trivial, but it really personally does help me to kind of just let it all go and then start fresh that next morning, and wake up and I'm like, all right,
Definitely.
I'm ready to go. Let's do it. So it's
Well,
nothing really
I'm
mystical or magical, I
no,
guess,
that's
that
fine.
I do. It's just what makes me feel good.
Well, laughter is super important. It raises our endorphins and we feel better. We feel
Yeah.
more positive and optimistic. It's great that you've gravitated towards that. I'm curious what shows you like that make you laugh, if you don't mind sharing. Because it's like I'm always looking for things to
Oh,
make me
no,
laugh.
that's fine. I mean, you guys are gonna think I'm just weird
No,
and goofy, but
I can
I
tell
mean,
you I am weird.
I watch everything from
Oh, I was
like
just gonna say I'm weird and goofy, so
I mean,
let's be there together.
perfect. Like, even my husband will be like, "Are you seriously watching that?" I'm like, "It makes me laugh. Leave me alone." But like, we'll watch stuff together. We'll watch like primetime sitcoms and stuff. But I even like some of the older shows. Like, I love the Golden Girls.
Excellent.
I love watching the older shows like that, because it's also kind of nostalgic for me. Like, some of those older comedies, um, you know, as they make me kind of think about my childhood a little bit, brings me back to my grandparents, and it just makes me happy, and it brings that nostalgia, which for me is really a good positive thing. But then, sometimes we'll really get into some of our dark comedies, some HBO shows. There's this one show that I don't know if you've heard of, called Barry, on HBO, that was just hilarious, but like, it's about a hitman. So it's really a weird kind of a combination.
Actually, I think I might watch it now. I haven't watched
So
it, but if it's about a hitman, we like those kind of shows for some reason, and it
it's
satisfies my.
awesome. It's Bill Hader. Bill Hader is the he's the main character in it, and he's an ex-Marine who's turned into a hitman. And I'll tell you, if you like Bill Hader at all, like this show is gonna make you love him. You should watch it. Barry on HBO. Everyone should watch it.
Okay, thank you. I'm checking it
I should be
out.
getting paid right now.
What was that?
So I should be getting paid right now for
Oh,
endorsing the
no kidding.
show.
Well, I just think I love sharing resources because it helps everyone expand their horizons. You know, it's going to resonate with some people. I'm seeing one message from Kelly Marie, the Golden Girls are awesome. I watched them with my grandma growing up. And I think Maude was a spinoff from
Yes,
that,
me too,
right?
right.
Yep. And I loved watching that. And then it made me think,
Yes, Maude and
yeah, what was I love those shows. Yes. It also,
I'm starting to lose you a little bit.
oh, I see that. Okay, I'm gonna talk slower.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know if that's gonna help because I see I'm fuzzy. And it's oddly nothing is happening with the weather.
You sound okay now. It was just kind of going in and out. That's
Okay.
all.
Well, the oh, I was gonna just mention I want to go back to programs and things, but that transition that you do, it's a transition point is kind of how I wrote it down, that finishing work and being really intentional about moving into something else, or at least I can't tell if you can hear me because my laptop is way lagging behind. So
I can hear you.
okay, good. That transition point and being really intentional about stepping away from one thing before moving into something else is something that speaking for myself, I still have a really hard time doing that. Remembering to do it. So the fact that you've brought that into something really intentional and are conscientious of it, I think is a really great way to establish boundaries around work, especially when you're working from home, which I also do.
Yep.
And so does my husband. And we have really bad boundaries a lot of times because we're in the same house all day long. And if we need something, we typically will just go and ask, and it interrupts the other person. And then it takes them 20 minutes to get back into it. And
Yep. That's me and my husband too. We both work from home, so I totally relate.
well,
Yep.
do you have other boundaries that you're willing to share? Because
Yeah. Well, so for instance, I have this room that I'm in. This was my oldest son's bedroom, and when he left, I took it over. Sorry, Dakota. But so I have my own space, which is great, and Malcolm has his own space, and we kind of honestly are on different time frames throughout the day. Like I'm more of a morning person where I get like a lot of my good work done first thing kind of in the mornings, where he is more of a night owl and gets a lot of his stuff done like once I go to bed. I mean, we both obviously work throughout the day, but it just is kind of has worked out where I'll get up first, I start my day, I do my things. He gets up later than me because he'll be up till 3 in the morning working. That's when he gets all of his stuff done, and I've been in bed for 4 hours. But what we do is, so I'll be in my area, and I make sure I get up in the morning, I shower, I change my clothes, I don't just stay in my pajamas all day, which can be easy to get into when you're working from home. So I make sure to do that. And then, I'll go out into the living room. We'll have lunch together. It's a daily thing. And then I'll go back to work. And I just kind of make sure to have that regiment that I follow. And so that it makes it easier for me to set that boundary of what is work and what is home time, because it's hard when you work from home like that. And when we both do, we're both, working in our own areas, but it makes it a little bit easier and makes it a little bit more regimented, which is something that I need to have that, those boundaries and that regiment of this is this, and being able to differentiate between the two in my own head really seems to help me personally.
That's really helpful. I think that, first of all, I've personally experienced what you have talked about of just not getting out of that routine, and having a structure can be really, really helpful. My husband used to have a structure that he would follow, and I always really respected that. And then he kind of slipped. And I wonder about the energy in the household and whether it's my energy that's passed on to him, where it's like, I don't like structure. But it's really been, it's been detrimental to me in terms of, because I do kind of rebel against structure and too much routine. I have to have the right mix. And so like the bookmarks of the day, I think are really, really helpful. And for me, I'm more of the night owl person. It takes me forever to get started in the morning, and it affects my husband because I think he actually is more of a morning guy, although I don't know that he'd actually say that. And then we have fuzzy boundaries around lunch. We don't have a time for lunch. So he'll usually make a lunch and then call me up or something. And I could go through lunch. I know that's not always the healthiest thing, but if I'm focused on something, I just want to keep going. And then when he asks, I feel obligated to go and eat the lunch because he was so kind to make it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then in the evenings, we still kind of play with our phones and do things. And I'm now that I'm separated from that in my parents' home, gives me a lot of awareness about those fuzzy boundaries and how they can really have an impact on our work. But also from the spiritual practice standpoint, I had to have an office that was contained and that other people really just knew not to mess with. Because otherwise, all of the energy of everybody else was starting to seep in and affect my ability to connect, really.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
absolutely. And I do clear my space, obviously, a lot, with, smudging with certain things, whether it be Palo Santo or sage or rosemary or essential oils, things like that. Because I do agree, too, when you're, working from home and you have your own space at home, it's easy for things to infiltrate it, when it's, when you have people coming and going and whatnot. So I totally can relate with that for sure.
Yeah, you're bringing up, I have these sprays that I brought along to my parents' place. Fortunately, they have a room that's separate from the rest of the house. It's kind of a bonus room. And I think that had we not, I was up here for a meeting, and it's my dad. He's a ham radio operator, so he does his radio stuff up here. And I had a meeting going on yesterday, and he was up here just kind of putzing around with a computer, and it was raining, and he's a really great guy, but he was sending off some negative vibes about the weather, and I was feeling it. And I'm like, okay, Dad, so like tomorrow when I have my show, you can't like be here. Okay. You just have to, it's like, and I didn't tell him why. I'm just like, nobody can interrupt me. It's a conversation. I'll get distracted, but
he's like, okay.
I just in case people are interested, I'm looking for the things to clear this space up here. I brought along some sprays. One is, Palo Santo clearing spray. I usually burn Palo Santo, but this spray is phenomenal. And it's I think it's less than 3 ounces or 3.5 ounces, so you can travel with it, which I drove. It's 2 fluid ounces. I drove, so it didn't matter, but I have been paying attention to that just in case, because it's like I'd like to take that anywhere and spray hotel rooms and stuff.
Absolutely.
And there's also one by this brand called Ritual Mist, which I've added to the mix. There's also a protection spray, which I use every now and again. I
love that.
I don't feel the need so much. And then that stuff's great. And then I also got, I'm not going to do these because they're really loud, got these at the last Bliss retreat at Sunrise Ranch. And these are super cool. I don't know if they all work the same way, but this particular set is off key when the energy isn't aligned. Let's say until I've cleared it completely, it will be off key, and then it will go, then the two will ring in harmony once the space has been cleared. It took me a while. I thought they were broken, and I'm like, how do you have, I don't even know what they're actually called. They're like Tibetan bells or something, but I don't know if they all work that way, or it's so,
that is really cool. I gotta look for those, because I do actually. I have my spray here that I make with new moon water, and then I'll add essential oils to it, because the new moon water is very clearing of energy. So I kind of like to make my own sprays with either full moon water or new moon water, and then I'll add essential oils to it that I want to incorporate into that energy. So like for this, for instance, is new moon water, frankincense, and orange.
Oh,
So it's very uplifting, very spiritual. So it clears out energy, but while imbuing other energy at the same time. So I absolutely love the whole sprays idea. I think it's great. Sometimes if I don't want to burn Palo Santo or rosemary or something like that, I just, like before this, I just spray it around. It smells so good. And it feels so good, just like, coming down on your face as you're spraying it. I'm like, yes.
I
So
I've got
I love
some.
that.
Is it Claire Grosnian? What's the Claire with the smell? Is that Claire Grosnian's?
That's Claire Gustance,
Gustance.
right?
That's it. Thank you.
And Claire
Yep.
Aliens is tasting, right? So Claire Gustance is smelling, yeah.
Yeah. That I
Exactly. And it'll raise your vibration, Absolutely.
Yep. So I can smell it when you're talking about it, and I'm like, okay, I really want it. I've forgotten about the moon water that you have like this phenomenal video about, and it's like,
Yeah.
yes. And don't we have a new moon or a full moon coming up, or have I missed
We
it?
do on Tuesday.
Awesome.
Tuesday, everybody.
Okay,
Full moon. Woo.
good.
Yep. We're ready. Strawberry moon. Get ready for it. It'll be a good one.
What makes a strawberry moon? What is that? Just because it looks
So
like a strawberry?
no, it's honestly it is in the northern hemisphere, especially in like North America. It is kind of celebrating the time of where it's time to harvest strawberries.
Oh, okay.
Hence is why it's called the strawberry moon. Um, if you go over to Europe, uh, they don't really strawberries aren't really native over there. So the June full moon, like in Europe, in east from here is a honey moon or a mead moon. So it can be kind of different depending where you are in the world. But for us here in North America, it's the strawberry moon because now's the time to go pick your strawberries, everybody. So, celebrate the summer solstice, celebrate summer, the warmth. And you could really celebrate the full moon next week by going to pick some strawberries yourself and eat them, enjoy them.
Yes.
And they're
Awesome.
really good for your root chakra too. So,
Very cool. Thank you.
yeah.
I'm intrigued by the honey or maid moon as well
Yes.
because there's a lot of weddings in June. Is that
Yep. That's very much correlated to that. So, back,
it's 111?
hundreds of years ago, when people would get married, they would be given gifts of mead a lot,
Mm-hmm.
for the new couple. And they also, so honey moon actually, or mead moon comes from the kind of the warmth color that does come from the moon because of where it is located on the horizon. It's always kind of low on the horizon in June at this time of year. So that's why they started with honey moon or mead moon because of the warmth that you kind of get from it. But that has turned over time because June is a big month for weddings and for people to get married. So that's where the term honeymoon came from.
That's
Where
what I
people
thought.
who go on their honeymoon because of the honey moon happening in June, which is when a lot of couples will get married. So it all just kind of correlate. Absolutely.
That is so interesting. So how did your interest in the moon pipe into your spiritual journey? Was it a very conscious decision to start exploring that, or was that something that just started?
No, it just happened. I don't even know. I don't know. I wish that's one thing I cannot pinpoint. And I've been thinking about it too. I'm like, when did this start? How did this happen? And I can't remember. Like, it feels like to me now that it's always just been a part of my life, but it hasn't.
Mm.
I mean, I guess it has, but I just maybe wasn't aware of it.
Mm.
But I'm gonna say, probably I would guess at this point, maybe about 3 years ago or so, that I just started reading more about it and learning about the phases, and it would just call to me and drew me in. And I mean, I feel that energetic connection. And once I realized that there could be an energetic connection and that was a real thing, I was like, oh, duh, this makes sense now. So
Ooh.
I don't have anything specific that like triggered it, to be honest with you. It just kind of evolved, I think, as I grew spiritually and as I grew into, who I am as a light worker. That just kind of evolved into, along with it, and kind of grew out of that somehow. And now, I'm a self-proclaimed moon goddess, I guess. But
Awesome.
it's just fascinating to me, and I love working with the energy of the moon. I find it to be really helpful for me personally, and I know for many other people too.
Yeah, I'm interested when you said that, there is an energetic connection to the moon. Can you say more about that? I'm really intrigued by that.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you think about it, you always hear the stories about how the full moon affects people, and then even back in time, where it comes to like, fairy tales with werewolves and things of that nature. But there really is truth to that, where you think about like the moon affects the oceans and the tides,
Hmm.
the moon affects, women's cycles. The full moon does affect, people's emotions. Working at a hospital that I did, in the OR, in the trauma OR, full moon, it was always like everybody knew. We're like, all right, you got to staff more. It's just
Oh,
common knowledge, And once you start to really study and become aware of the different energy that each phase of the moon has, it will start to make sense to you.
mm,
Because starting with the new moon and going through the 8 phases, there's specific energies that work with us. And if you learn about them and become aware of it, you become more aware of yourself and why you may be reacting in certain ways or not reacting in certain ways. And that energy does affect us just like it does the tides, or like I said, our cycles as women, in general. And the full moon is known for making things much more intense. So any emotions that you're going to be having during a full moon cycle, which is 4 days usually,
mm.
whether you're happy, excited, joyful, or whether you're sad or anxious or nervous, it's going to intensify those feelings you already have. So always be aware of that, especially during the full moon, because everything's going to just feel bigger
Mm.
and, more intense for you. So, it just, like I said, it depends on the phases of the moon, as they all hold their own energy that affects us in those ways. I hope I answered your question.
Very much so. Yes, and you bring up some really I've always had a connection to the moon, but I've not gone into the depth that you have in understanding the different phases. The full moon part, I worked as a teenager in a healthcare center for people with Alzheimer's. Primarily, it was a locked facility because these were people who would wander away and things like that, so they weren't able to live in a conventional care facility. And so I remember one day specifically when everybody was just, freaking out, to put it mildly. And we had
Yeah.
we had light blocking curtains in that unit, and I remember pulling the curtains open, and there is like a harvest moon, full harvest moon. I didn't realize before,
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
like, oh, well, of course, now I get it. I mean,
Like, yeah.
everybody got it. I was very interested to hear that where you worked, they would increase staffing because, I always thought that would have been a really helpful thing for where we worked because we didn't have the staffing to support all of the increased emotional tension that
Yeah. Yeah.
outbursts, that occurred.
Absolutely. And then of course it depends on the seasons too. Like
Mm,
if it's a summer Friday night full moon,
mm,
you're like, oh crap, all hell's gonna break loose.
yeah.
Like you just, and it is weird because obviously when you're working in a facility like that, you can't be like, well, I gotta staff more because of the full moon. They'll be like, whatever. But some some of the people would just kind of, be like, hey, why don't you come in and get some extra OT or
Yeah.
something, we have a feeling we may need you, and you can kind of slide it through that way,
Yep.
because of course it's not something you can scientifically say, well, we need to do this and this, but
Well,
after you do it long enough, like you just know, like there's trends, and
definitely.
you
Well,
got to prepare.
I always mention the full moons to my husband because he We both, he drives, he doesn't, neither of us drive a huge amount, but when we drive on full moons or around full moons, I always make him aware of it because he seems to attract scary drivers anyway. I have a whole theory around that I'm not going to go into, but um, people on full moons drive differently. And since I road tripped down here, I made sure to plan the trip to where we wouldn't be driving around a full moon because
Smart.
it's like,
Very
I don't
smart.
want to be around that.
I'm the same way. As I get older, my anxiety where it comes to driving and like road trips is getting worse and worse for some reason. So I can
Oh my
totally
gosh.
relate to that.
Well, and if you've ever been around Nashville, Nashville has their traffic has just gotten really, really, really bad over the past few years. And the last time we drove down here, we spent a good 3 hours between coming down here and leaving in traffic jams with these, I mean, scary accidents that we would pass. This time, I really put to work my angelic team, my spiritual team
Yep.
to really create a smooth driving experience, and it really worked well. We had a slowdown in Nashville, but nothing, I mean, we were always moving, which is very unlike the last time we drove. And I think that I had asked for to be safe, but I didn't do as much to prepare the road, the actual roads we were going to be on. And this time I visualized it and everything was green and moving smoothly. And, I visualize a bubble around the car. I visualize Archangel Michael hanging out on the rooftop, having fun with just going along with the ride.
That's what I do too. I'm like, you just sit on the hood of the car,
have
I'll
a good
steer,
and
you keep everything clear around me, okay, Big Mike?
and he's it worked. So, knock on wood, and I will keep it's now become a practice for me to do that, just especially for road trips, but even shorter ones. It's like, okay, if it's like if I notice any weird driving, especially, it's like, okay, what have I done the bubble? Have I done, is Archangel Michael with me? What am I doing?
Absolutely.
I was going to ask about the when you talk about the different phases of the moon. Well, and how did you? I don't want to make it sound that way. Are there resources or places that you have found helpful to understand different moon phases or more about the moon that you can recommend?
There are some great books for sure, and of course I cannot think of the name of them right now. I honestly, a lot of it has been just like research from online and just reading different people's articles and other people's ideas and other people's connections, and I've just kind of incorporated my own
interpretation
and intuitiveness into it.
Sure.
Most of it for me is me connecting just with the moon energy and intuitively gaining information. And a lot of the stuff that I do talk about too is certain herbs or crystals that really connect with certain moon phases or certain energy. But it's really just been kind of taking the time to just read and learn as much as I can from so many people that I don't even know, just basic articles that I find. It's all just kind of self-learning, I'd have to say. There isn't any one specific like book or anything in particular that I can pinpoint. It's kind of been a whole self-evolving process, and then me incorporating, because I know I have that connection. I know that I have stuff to share, and it's just me opening up to that and allowing that information to come through to me so that I can share it. So that's pretty much it.
I just love that. Well, you'd mentioned there may be some books that you can, if you think of them later, can send to me and I'll add them to the resource list. But
I will, for sure.
This circles back for me around trust. Trust in self and your intuitive abilities, and allowing those to really flow smoothly into you. I keep thinking about how when I was a kid, I was Such a goofy kid. So we had this fairly decent backyard, and I remember camping out. I don't know how old, maybe about my daughter's age, around 11 or 12, with a flashlight and a transistor radio, which dates myself definitely, but I don't care. But I'd be out there waiting for the solar or the lunar eclipse to happen. And nobody else in my family cared at all. They were like, okay, you're going to sit out there all night and wait for the lunar eclipse. And I did. I was drawn to do that. It wasn't like I had any knowledge about anything. I heard it was coming up. And I remember a few years ago, we had another one, like a full lunar eclipse. And I was the only one. I made my daughter come out and look, but she's like, oh, and then left, and it was like, well, thanks. That was really awesome. And we had an exchange student here. I made her go out and look, and she cared even less. But it's like recognizing those connections and really allowing that energy to flow into you is just, I think that's a really big message. Somebody, I think, asked in the comments earlier about how do you trust? And I know we have about 6 minutes left, but can you think of anything to where you consciously just allowed that in? I mean, do you have any tips or suggestions on how do you get to that point where you can really trust?
Honestly, I honestly have to say that to get to that point of where I do just trust now is really learning from my mentors and from from Crystal, honestly, and Lauren and Trisha, and Justine, these people have taught me that I have something to share that is special and different. We all do. And as soon as we realize that we can't compare ourselves to somebody else, to what somebody else might have to teach or share, that we all have our unique own way of how we connect and of what we connect to, and to the energy that we hold so close to our hearts and our souls. As soon as we realize that we each individually have something special, some special light to share, and as soon as you trust that you have that within you, that really helps you to lean into that and to accept. It's like saying, yes, I'm ready to just teach me, bring the messages in, let me know what I should let everybody else know. And for me, it was really about having that support of like-minded people telling me, you're special. Hey, just because you don't channel archangels, or just because you might not be the best medium, doesn't mean that you don't have something special that needs to be put out there as well. So it was really about the support of the community around me, to be honest with you, that led me to trusting into myself.
And I thank you. I think that support goes a huge way in allowing practice, and really feeling comfortable and safe, because it's a vulnerable spot to be in, to go out there and try some of these different things. For those of you who aren't aware, there is the Lab Lightroom, and it's a great place for people to practice. Right now, I think it's mainly designated teachers and practitioners who practice there, but I think they're opening it up to other people to practice too. I'm not exactly sure of who all practices in there. I know I get to practice in there and have. It's such a safe and supportive place to do it. Everybody's so positive, and that really helps to develop that trust. And there are people who have never done a reading before who will then practice in like an intuitive, intensive place too. And have really developed very quickly their intuitive and mediumship skills. It's just amazing. And I'm still a holdout on that. I still feel like I don't know exactly where my place is in those areas. I have some abilities, but I haven't gone out there. And so, yes, once again, I've had this hit many times from different people I've had on the show and other areas. It's like, just go out there and let's see what emerges. So,
absolutely.
I
Because we're
will.
always evolving, we're always changing, and you're not going to know, you're not going to be able to evolve until you start the process of doing it,
Right.
you know?
Yep.
I mean, it changes for me constantly.
It's pushing down that wall. I have to say, there is one last movie, I think, 2 minutes before the end, one that I thought did a really good job of visualizing the wall of resistance is a Simon Pegg movie, not a PC title, called Run, Fat Boy, Run. Have you ever seen
I
it?
love that
I
movie.
love
Yes.
that movie. Yes. And
Such a good movie.
um,
Yes.
that movie inspired me with the wall part, especially because it's like I can feel this physical wall, and it's like, okay, but it's fake. I mean, it's all in our
Right,
heads,
right,
and it's
right.
like
Exactly.
you could just decide to push through it. It's not always the
Yep.
easiest thing to do in the moment, but at the same point, that's all it really takes. So,
Exactly.
on that note, Stephanie, thank you so much again for being here, for taking the time to
Thank
have this
you.
conversation. I love talking with you. It's
It's
just,
so fun.
yeah.
I
So,
love it. I remember our first conversation in Denver International Airport last year, and I'm glad it's grown to this.
I know. And who knew at the time, right?
Right.
We were both very different people at the time, I think, and have really, things have just changed and
Oh,
evolved in so many amazing ways. So,
absolutely.
so with that, thanks again. And please join.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Awesome.
Thanks. Take
Bye,
care.
guys.